Immigration reform in the U.S. continues to be a source of political debate. But over time, how much have immigration laws actually changed, and what makes the topic of immigration so controversial? News 8's Sarah Tamer spent some time with local immigration attorneys and immigrants who moved to our area. She's here now with this News 8 Investigates report.
Mike, immigration laws haven't changed in 65 years. Many of the challenges facing these laws have remained regardless of who has been president. As our country awaits potential changes to current laws, people continue to migrate to the U.S. There are currently more than 11 million immigrants without legal status living and working in the U.S. In Wisconsin, 85,000 people have illegally settled in the state. 3/4 of them are from Mexico. I sat down with a couple of immigrants and heard their stories of hope and hardship. Since the 1800s, the Statue of Liberty embodied hope and opportunity for immigrants seeking a better life in America.
At some point that changed when people became fearful of how it was going to impact them economically.
The iconic statue stands as a symbol of freedom.
Back home, people are more suffering in persecution, killing, and arrest. But when I compare myself here, I'm not being persecuted now, and I'm not being arrested or killed in the United States.
While many people migrate to the U.S. for freedom, every immigrant has a different story.
It was better if my sons and I come here.
Zamicha Gora arrived to Austin, Minnesota in 2016 as a refugee from one of the largest refugee camps in Kenya. Jessica Barrera Santoyo was able to petition through her ex-husband.
He was trying to do the papers for me and our sons.
Gora was granted entry by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services through a form called I-94, which allows refugees like him who are fleeing persecution and massacres a chance at a new life.
When I compare, the life is better a bit than when I was home or when I was in refugee camps.
When he settled, he received help from Prince of Peace Church in La Crescent.
When the Syrian crisis hit a year ago, or a year and a half ago, the congregation was wanting to find out what we could do.
Gora and Barrera's stories are similar to many people who migrate to the country each year in hopes of achieving the American dream. But in reality, their process wasn't as difficult as it is for many others.
Today, people need to know, first of all, that it's just not as simple as filling out an immigration application.
That's because immigration laws haven't changed since the 1952 Immigration and Nationality Act.
Congress has not taken any action on passing new laws or reforming our system.
When it comes to gaining legal status, it isn't easy, and laws are specific.
You need to be an immediate relative of someone who is a citizen or legal permanent resident. It's also that you need to be maybe a qualified refugee or someone who has sought asylum in this country. It's only the rare exception, or the victim of a crime or domestic violence.
La Crosse immigration attorney John David says the laws are limited and have been for decades.
We don't have laws in place that protect people who we all would agree are in danger, and if they were forced to go to their home country, probably wouldn't survive, and yet we don't have an application or a process for them to be here legally.
David says his immigration office in La Crosse alone serves immigrants from more than 30 countries every year. He says in Wisconsin, immigrants without legal status are working in jobs the state is still struggling to fill. And while the United States is a place for them to find safe homes and jobs, they aren't eligible for the benefits of U.S. citizens. David answers a commonly asked question.
Are immigrants going to be a burden on our tax system or on our government? And the reality is, you can't apply for anything if you're not a legal permanent resident. If you're not a citizen, you can't get any welfare. You can't get food stamps, you can't get public housing, you can't get Social Security or any kind of general assistance. You're simply not eligible, and people don't know that.
Pastor Kent at Prince of Peace Church says it's the complex system that inspired him to help people like Gora and his family.
It's making us be more intentional and more, faith and standing up for what's right could have consequences. As we determine how to work within the laws, but also to change the laws.
Attorneys say while the laws have always been challenging, President Trump's recently proposed policies on immigration heightened some of the fears for both immigrants and U.S. citizens living in La Crosse.
I have schools calling me, hospitals calling me. It's not just the people themselves, but people are concerned about their neighbor. They're concerned about their student in the classroom.
Because in the past, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement would look for people with certain criminal convictions. Those priorities now changed under the new administration.
So what that means is where before I could tell families, the government is not looking to deport you, they are looking for people with criminal convictions or who already had a final order to leave and did not. Now we don't know what's next.
For Gora, coming to the U.S. was a life or death situation.
If I couldn't just flee away, I would have prosecuted, arrested, or even killed by the government of Ethiopia.
He says being in the U.S. gives him a sense of relief, but he still doesn't have citizenship, which makes his story unpredictable.
And I asked myself, how can I stay here if I'm not citizens, if I don't receive my green card?
For Barrera, coming here was so her sons can have a better education. However, her stay is temporary, and now she's waiting to gain citizenship too.
Hacer la aplicación para obtener la
When I
ciudadanía.
have been here for 5 years, I can apply for citizenship.
David says there's no easy fix, but changes in the laws need to be made in order for the country to keep up with the conversations that are happening today.
We need to do something for these families so that we haven't torn up our community.
Our message is that Jesus was a refugee. We know that people are strangers seeking new beginnings, and we're called to love and welcome all people.
For more than a century, Lady Liberty has promised to take the tired, the poor, and the huddled masses from around the world. But as times change, some people believe that message might be changing too.
Are we still a Statue of Liberty country?
Immigration attorneys I spoke to say one of the most difficult things they're dealing with now is helping immigrants who are so ingrained in our society but still don't have an ability to be here legally. They also say one of the biggest challenges they're seeing is many immigrants without legal status, mainly women, won't report crimes or domestic abuse to the local police department because they're scared they might be deported.
On that same line of thinking, does someone need to be a U.S. citizen in order to be protected here in the U.S. against the crime?
So, good question. I actually learned no, you don't have to be a U.S. citizen. By law, if you are a victim of a crime, you are protected. This actually in turn helps local police departments keep our communities safe. They also say, regardless of people's citizenship status, you still have rights to remain silent and not open a door to your house or to your home without a warrant from a judge.
Okay, very interesting. Thanks very much, Sarah.